They reached the championship rounds in the main event of UFC 305 for the middleweight championship. And Dricus du Plessis, less than a minute into the fourth round, submitted former UFC middleweight champion Israel Adesanya. And du Plessis, his 8th straight win in the UFC and his first title defense at 185, takes out the legend Izzy Adesanya. With UFC 305 from Perth, Australia in the books, we say hello to CBS Sports combat sports analyst Luke Thomas. Luke, let's talk about the main event. Dricus du Plessis, Israel Adesanya. There was so much venom from these two heading into the fight. It turned out to be an exceptional battle between these two at 185. How was it that du Plessis was able to submit the legend that is Izzy Adesanya in round 4?
Well, the short answer is that he chased down the takedown from continued punches. He off-balanced him. Interestingly, one thing you have to know, and this has happened in several UFC fights with Dricus du Plessis, is he doesn't necessarily get an authoritative takedown. Sometimes he does, but a lot of times what he'll do is he'll gable grip up and then sag his weight and pull the guy over. It's unorthodox, but if you're strong and you're heavy and you really know what you're doing and you're an opportunistic fighter, he took him to the mat, immediately took his back, and then sunk in the choke. The point I'm trying to raise here is he didn't take his time position to position. He just forces offense all the time. There's always offense, behind offense, behind offense, behind offense. This has been his calling card in his entire UFC career. It's how he beat former champion Robert Whittaker and stopped him. It's how he beat former champion Sean Strickland. It's how he beat now former champion Israel Adesanya. It is his calling card. You saw it earlier in the fight, and he gets rebuffed. It's not a 100% thing that always works for him, and oftentimes it doesn't. But he is perseverant. He is tough. He has very stout defense. And I thought that Izzy was getting the better on the feet for a while, but what keeps DDP in fights, aside from being a physical tank, is what I referenced earlier. It is offense behind offense behind offense. And the instant you let your guard down, either literally or metaphorically, he's on your back. And if you're Izzy, he's choking you out. DDP, no accident that this guy's a champion.
Yet no accident that the guy's won 8 straight fights in UFC. What's next? Who's next for him at middleweight?
So there are going to be 2 choices out there. Now, UFC president Dana White has already said Sean Strickland, the former middleweight champ who actually got the belt from beating Izzy, he is saying that that guy is going to be next. That is probably a fight that they're going to make, although that's not going to be necessarily a blockbuster, so we'll see. I think a bit of a wild card is what's going to happen a little bit later this year when Robert Whittaker, who was supposed to have fought Khamzat Chimaev already in Saudi Arabia for the UFC's debut there, they're going to run that one back. And honestly, I think if Robert Whittaker looks really good, they could make him the next title contender. But the other interesting part is, what if Khamzat Chimaev goes in there and then just bulldozes Robert Whittaker? I think he could jump the queue. So it's going to be one of those 3 names. I know some folks might say maybe he jumps to 205. DDP does. I doubt that that is realistic for right now. But it's Strickland, Whittaker, or Khamzat. One of those 3. In all likelihood, Sean Strickland.
Been a year since we saw Izzy Adesanya in the octagon, but he comes back. He even said it. He's never felt better. He looked great out there for the most part. Well, I mean, except for the ending, of course. How was the play, Mrs. Lincoln? But what's next for Izzy Adesanya now?
Well, that was just it. He made an error in judgment, and he paid for it, and that's the fight game against a great fighter, by the way. So no harm, no foul. People were asking me this week, does Izzy retire here? And the truth of the matter is, I thought he would only retire if he didn't have a lot of options. But he didn't look bad tonight. In fact, you could argue he was maybe winning this fight up until he simply wasn't. At a bare minimum, he performed quite ably. He did not look like he had ring rust. He did not look like he was old by any stretch of the imagination. So what I think is possible is I think probably 185 might be extinguished. And he's been bulking up all this time. I think he goes to 205. And honestly, 205 is wide open right now. And also, for the part of it that's not wide open, the championship is his longtime former foe, Alex Pereira, the guy who he's gone 1-1 with in MMA and lost 2 kickboxing bouts with. That guy is the champion at 205. If you mean to tell me if Izzy can get a win or 2 at 205, they wouldn't make that fight? They'd make that fight in a heartbeat. Of course, there's still going to be a market for it. It's all a function of options. So I think he continues the bulk. I think he changes divisions. He gets a new set of potential opponents. And honestly, with the exception of Alex Pereira, it is very conceivable he could find himself in a title fight in short order up there.
12 straight championship fights for Izzy Adesanya. What is it that keeps him sort of on top wherever he is, whenever he fights?
Again, he made some errors here tonight, and all the credit in the world goes to DDP. But the reason he was in a fight like this is because at worst, he is the second best middleweight of all time. Anderson Silva would be number one, I think, pretty clearly, but he's number two. He brought in an incredibly sophisticated striking game, and he and his team from City Kickboxing, in my judgment, changed the overall MMA game in terms of how much they made feinting such a big part of the game. And that sounds like it's a small thing. It's not. It's huge. In fact, I think it changed MMA striking in a significant way overall. They weren't the only guys doing it, but they had a pronounced effect in making it more ubiquitous. Of course, he is athletic, he is dynamic, he is full of self-belief, but it's this incredible striking style, in addition to the fact that this was his longest layoff of 11 months. He was a bit of an Iron Man. Guys, if you look at his boxing, kickboxing, and MMA record, I believe it's now with this one loss, I believe it's 110 and 10. That is the overall record in 3 combat sports. He is a prodigy when it comes to striking. In the overall MMA game, DDP was the better man tonight. But again, the success of Izzy, also no accident.
120 combat sport fights is amazing for how great he looks at the age of 35. And he said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not done. Want to talk about the co-main event before I let you go? Lasted a lot shorter than the main event. First round stoppage for Kai Kara-France over Steve Erceg. Kind of made it look easy. Are we looking at a title shot now for Kai Kara-France? Has he earned it?
I think he has earned it. Flyweight is desperate for a surging contender. I think it's going to be him. He has an exciting style. He got very close, you'll remember, before his fight with Brandon Moreno, a fight he was doing well in, and then he backed out and got hit with the body kick, and it folded him, and he lost the opportunity there. But Kai Kara-France, striking style, comes from a big team. Again, as I mentioned, this is a division that is always looking for title contender. Steve Erceg, by the way, in his last fight, was in a title fight with Alexandre Pantoja, who is, of course, the existing UFC flyweight champion. So can't guarantee that, but I would say if I had to bet, I think you bet all the money on KKF being your next flyweight title contender.
Pretty much an entertaining card from top to bottom. UFC 305 from Perth, Australia is now done. And much thanks to Luke Thomas, CBS Sports Combat Sports analyst. Luke, thanks so much.
Anytime.
UFC 306, it's coming up in less than a month's time, promising to be quite the spectacle, emanating from the Sphere in Las Vegas. Could get some fireworks in that main event. Merab the Machine, Duvashvili, and Sugar Sean O'Malley. They got history, and their fight is going to close out the night. The co-main figures to be something to see, man. The trilogy fight for the women's flyweight championship after Alexa Grasso's upset win to take the title, and then the split draw with Valentina Shevchenko, who dominated that division for so long. Yeah, that's going to be a good one. UFC 306 coming your way September 14th from Las Vegas.